Today I will be talking about Bitcoin vulnerability. Earlier this year, Mt. Gox claimed that $400 million in Bitcoins were stolen from their accounts. This caused the Bitcoin exchange service to then declare bankruptcy. Obviously, this has caused some grievances and even accusations against Mt. Gox in the Bitcoin community. So let's look at the stakeholders in this issue. Well, first we have Mt. Gox, or rather in general, Bitcoin exchange services. Mt. Gox was the leading and first major Bitcoin exchange service on the net, and earlier this year they lost $400 million in Bitcoins from their clients' funds, leading to the end of the company. So then Bitcoin users in general, or rather more specifically the Mt. Gox users, are another stakeholder, and they lost their funds in Mt. Gox, or lost their funds because the Bitcoin value dropped dramatically after the hack. So to truly understand this issue, let's look at more background about the Bitcoin. Well, the Bitcoin uses peer-to-peer technology to operate with no central authority or bank. It manages its own transactions and the issuing of Bitcoins all through the network. Bitcoins are completely open sourced, it's public in its design, and nobody owns it or controls it, and everyone can take part of it. Through many of its unique properties, Bitcoin allows exciting uses that were not previously covered by any payment system, including its worldwide payments that have zero or very low fees. So how does the Bitcoin really work? First, you have to download a software or use an online facility, also called your Bitcoin wallet. Your wallet can then create many unique Bitcoin addresses that link it back to your account. So these allow Bitcoins to be transferred to your account but are not tied to any personal data, which leads to the anonymity factor in the Bitcoin. Bitcoins can either be gained by mining, which rewards Bitcoin users or miners for solving puzzles, and Bitcoin can also be exchanged in services like Mt. Gox for standard offline currencies. So what are some limits of the Bitcoin? Well, there's no central authority, means it's completely unregulated, and this could add to the vulnerability. Transactions are all irreversible, meaning that once something is sent, there's no way to get it back, and everything is final. Transactions are broadcasted and publicly shown in the blockchain. So this really means that while many people think their Bitcoin use is entirely anonymous, it can actually be traced. All the transfers can be completely traced back to their accounts if enough time is spent on it. Another limit is the value volatility, and this really adds to the fact that there's no regulation of the currency, meaning it can skyrocket or plummet pretty much whenever, according to its users. And then the main issue we're talking about today, which apparently caused the hack according to Mt. Gox, is transaction malleability. And so while transactions are signed to confirm them within the blockchain, the Bitcoin transaction malleability bug happens because not all data in the transaction that has been hashed to create the transaction hash is covered by the signature. This means that a node on the network may change the transaction in such a way that the hash is invalidated. In this case, the Bitcoin will transfer, yet not register in the blockchain, therefore making it be sent over and over again. So what are some negative impacts on the Bitcoin users? Well, so obviously for the Mt. Gox users, they lost their funds and they lost extreme confidence in the Bitcoin. But if you look at the more wide users of Bitcoins that don't necessarily use the exchange service Mt. Gox, there's a dramatic drop in the Bitcoin value, as you can see in this chart, around the time that Mt. Gox got hacked, and there's a general loss in confidence in the Bitcoin. Positive impacts on Bitcoin users, well, there's really minimal positive impacts for the general Bitcoin users, in fact none. But I guess the Mt. Gox hackers are also Bitcoin users, and well, they made $400 million, so I guess that's a positive impact. And then the negative impacts on the Bitcoin exchanges, well, Mt. Gox itself went bankrupt, and the Bitcoin lost value, meaning that they obviously lost money in that. It also lost trust in the Bitcoin and exchanges in general, meaning not only Mt. Gox, but also other Bitcoin exchanges may now have issues finding customers or securing them, making them feel safe as customers. So what are some positive impacts there's a Mt. Gox conspiracy that the heist was actually an inside job, and this would mean that the owners just made $400 million in Bitcoin, so that would be a positive impact for them. But then in general, for other Bitcoin exchanges, they may get an increase in business because now the oldest and largest exchange service is no longer competing, so this would lead to growth and competition in the Bitcoin market. So what is a non-technical solution? Well, the easiest one that I recognize would be regulation. So this would mean more visibility over the Bitcoin transactions, and there would be a central organization that regulates the Bitcoin, like a government does with any government currency now. But there are some negatives to this. Obviously, the Bitcoin would lose the anonymous factor that it's so famous for and so loved for by many users, meaning there would be potential loss in users, increased transaction fees because you have to pay the regulation, and there's a potential for abuse from the central authorities, as they could maneuver themselves to make more money or mess with the market value of the Bitcoin. The technical solution I identified was the use of other cryptocurrencies. So Bitcoin is obviously not the only cryptocurrency out there. It may have been the first, but there are now Bitcoin alternatives. So the most famous is the Litecoin, and then there's also the Doggy coin and the Kanye West coin, although it was sued by Kanye West earlier this year. So there are differences in how the transactions function in each of these coins, although they're all very similar. Some of them function with multi-signature confirmations rather than the way the Bitcoin works, making it potentially a little. So what are some negatives of these new cryptocurrencies, some alternative cryptocurrencies? Well, there's lack of large-scale testing and lack of popularity, and that you might have their own possible security risks because they haven't been tested yet, really, and haven't been used in commercial retail sectors. You can't necessarily tell that they're better than the Bitcoin is. So they also stand for abuse from their creators, as historically many new alternative currency creators will mine lots of their own coins before releasing the coin into the public, thereby making them very wealthy with no competition. Local businesses have also now adopted the Bitcoin and would have to switch their entire payment service for a new currency, and this will potentially put businesses off of alternative currencies as it's difficult and expensive. So what is the best solution out there? Well, there's no perfect solution, but I would say neither of the solutions I just mentioned. Rather, regulation, because regulation would lead to the end of the Bitcoin, because it loses its anonymity, and that's what users really like about it. The switch to alternative currencies is also risky, as I explained before. So the real solution is just to fix the bug, fix the transaction malleability bug. And that's easier said than done, but efforts are underway to make first make Bitcoin nodes not relay non-standard signatures, and eventually disallow them from being included in new blocks entirely, and that would fix the bug and secure the Bitcoin. Thank you.